I'm really glad, to see all of you here, and it's always pleasure to meet the CFOs because we get good stories when we meet them. And just to begin, my name is Amol Dete. I'm heading this ET CFO vertical. As an editor, I have been a journalist, finance journalist since last 15 years. Today we thought, we have been doing this series of discussions on the customer related businesses and how after the pandemic, the customer businesses or the specifically CPG industry, if you call it, has been driving by the CFOs with the innovation in the digital aspect. And that is what we are going to discuss here because the world has changed. People are heading towards the packaged food. Many of have shifted to vegan or maybe only healthy foods during the pandemic, and many new portals have come which are actually, supplying only, such products. So glad to see all of you, and I think most of you are catering to those companies whose product we use on a daily basis. So whether it's Parle or Colgate, so it's really nice to see all of you here. And I think before we begin, I will introduce all of you first. So, the speakers that we have here, starting with Mangesh Shirodkar, the CF of SRL Diagnostics. Mangesh, glad to have you.
Thank you.
I have Saurav Bala, CFO, Aztec Crop Care. Saurav, glad to have you.
Good evening. Hi.
Thank you. I have Alpesh Mehta, the General Manager, Supply Chain, Piramal Pharma Solutions. Alpesh, glad to have you. I have Pragyat Kaul, Company Secretary and Compliance Officer, Crompton Greaves Consumer Electrics. Glad to have you.
Glad to be here.
Thank you. I have Nidhi Pathavia, CFO, Sanathan Textiles. Glad to have you.
Thank you.
I have Dhaval Pandya, Corporate CIO, Piramal Enterprises Limited. Dhaval, glad to have you.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone.
Yeah, I have Vipin Gandhi, Leader, Industry and Innovation, SAP. Vipin, glad to have you.
Happy to be here.
I have Ashish Bansal, Director, Customer Service and Logistics, Colgate Palmolive India. Ashish, glad to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I have Madhav Nishthala, Senior Director and Industry Cloud Strategy and Business Development, SAP. Madhav, glad to have you.
Thank you.
When we see the major developments specifically in the consumer industry, after the pandemic, how do you see the major changes in the customer segment right now for you or your industry as a CFO? Will the changes that happened during the pandemic will continue, or what kind of new changes as a CFO will you do in the consumer business industry going ahead?
So consumer behavior definitely has changed post-pandemic. So prior to pandemic, we had something called walk-in.
Yeah.
And walk-in was major part of our business where the people, the customers or patients used to walk into our labs and do the test. But since post-pandemic, home collection and home wellness has taken forefront, and now we are building the entire ecosystem, like to have flavors, to have riders who can go to their home, collect the samples, bring it to the lab. So entire focus has changed from walk-in or physical, the customers coming to our place to we going to their place. So what we call is so from they walking to our center, it's like home service. What will be the future?
Great.
So that's the initial thoughts.
Okay, sure. Ashish, what do you think? I mean, because yours is again an industry which is, in every household, right? We have to contribute at least 2% of our budget to.
and we would love you to spend more on that. But I think I just want to build on the point on what Mangesh said. I think structurally, I believe pandemic, of course, it has its own a lot more nuances and no one wants to go through that pain again, but I think it has fundamentally changed the consumer expectation. So while it might be a walk-in for a diagnostic industry, I think what has also evolved is the consumer awareness journey. So it has started moving in from a point where the consumers are, earlier you were making consumer aware again, like a walk-in or a point of presence sale. That is, now the consumers are becoming much more aware because they have lived through a phase where they have experienced products through a digital format. So I think that's a part of the journey that is going through. So the touch point to reach a consumer is becoming much more fragmented what it used to be. And what it is also leading to is all brands and leading brands, everyone now investing into the direct to consumer channel as well. Again, it's not necessarily the primary driver for your sales channel. I mean, it might be contributing relatively insignificant, but it's becoming an awareness and a consideration channel because the consumer wants to know more about your brands, and today you have that obligation to provide that as a part of the journey. And that is then leading to different avenues of sales, and that could be again coming back to the traditional channel or even going to the online mode of purchase. So while the brands which have been even day-to-day usage, you need to necessarily have a digital presence to make sure that the consumer is aware and they are considering you. And then purchase decisions, of course, happens in different formats as we go. So that's my built-up thought on this.
Okay. Yeah, I think the innovation technology has been evolved so significantly. So Madhav, let me bring you here, and if you could share some trends specifically, maybe globally or India, that you are seeing in this industry.
Actually, one of the big trends is also direct to consumer. What has happened is consumer product companies specifically never had this customer connect, the end user connect. And for some, the pandemic reasons, they were forced into it. So what then happened was they on the fly came up with ways to connect with customers, which is very well in those times. What has happened today is the need for optimizing that has come. A lot of the trends that we see is what was done out of a compulsion because they needed to do sales. What is the cost of doing it? Home delivery is fine. Serving the customer at the doorstep is fine. But all of each loop in the supply chain adds cost. It eats into the margins. What now companies are looking at is, do I still continue the home delivery? The customer demand is of course there. How do I optimize this? How do I bring in maybe use tech to ensure the last mile delivery is most optimal and most economical and profitable? Because that's the profitability of the exigencies of the pandemic is one of the biggest trends today. Because that is in a sense a course of survival. The other big thing is, over the last 5-10 years, we've always spoken about omni-channel, and that was that concept there. What has now happened is that has hit the business today, and omni-channel is happening, and that's the demand. So from a nice to have, it has now become a hygiene aspect. Now everybody wants and thinks about how can I get this. The moment that becomes a hygiene, that as a differentiator is gone, and therefore the greater the focus on the experience.
Right.
Now, people are making decisions between brands based on the experience of the last mile delivery, which in most cases is not in our control.
Right.
Because how the pizza delivery boy will behave is not in the control of Domino's or Pizza Hut, or in sense how the Amazon or how the CloudTel guy will behave with you. But that has an implication on this. Therefore, the trend that has come is experience collection at multiple points.
Right.
Even at the time of delivery, you have the amount of SMS that you get saying, are you happy, are you satisfied? This never happened 4 years ago.
Correct. But OTIF is very important, right?
Yes. And that is also the other aspect of it. Thank you. Is the supply chain demands that have come. From tech, we see that all along our supply chain was catered for volume. The measure that we were looked at. So you have a warehousing solution, yes. The next question was, how many orders can you process in an hour? Versus then, therefore, we were doing, the parameter was volume of orders. Now the parameter has now become, because most orders are the single customers.
Right.
So Madhav orders one pizza and from one Colgate toothpaste, but that has to be delivered.
Correct.
Tweaking of technology to break the bulk and deliver one piece to the customer in terms of time, OTIF, and also to ensure the implications back on the supply chain. That's a completely different way of looking at supply chain.
Okay.
We were always volume focused. Looking at from a perspective of volume efficiency to individual customer efficiency, and supply chain is never thought like that before.
Yes.
These are, I think, the top 3 trends that I see in the last couple of years.
I think meaningful thoughts there, Madhav. I think since you added to it, Pragya, why don't you speak something about the business innovation and the compliance, which is important there, on that part. What would you like to add? Because everybody is looking for digital transformation, digital innovation, creating business value out of it. But compliance is also an important part there.
Correct. So simply put, when you talk about business, it is earning money, right? If you innovate your products, then only your business will grow. However, when you have some products which you want to sell, there are certain internal and external regulations that you have to comply with. And when people talk about innovation, compliance officers are treated as a roadblock. We are not treated as an enabler. We face many challenges. They say that you are not business friendly. So we many a times hit a roadblock, and people go and complain to the managing director also. So I have faced that personally. But it is not that you cannot do both of these together, because innovation and compliance are not foes, they are friends. So what we have done, I'll share my personal experience in Crompton. What we have done is, we have digitalized all of our processes. Be it our agreements, be it our IP approval process, be it our board processes, be it our legal cases status processes, and we have all mapped the regulatory requirements of each one of the transaction or any business decision that Crompton wants to take. And this has also helped us a lot during pandemic.
Right.
During COVID days, the digitalization of the processes that we had in Crompton, we also have for supply chain also. It is digitalized. Procurement process is also digitalized. So that helped us a lot. So I think compliance can help, in fact, business innovation and help the business grow. Because if you want to grow and you don't comply with rules, then it doesn't make sense at all.
Right.
So both can work together. So this is my take on this.
Okay. So since we spoke about compliance, supply chain, Avadhut, I will come to you, and from Parley's perspective, you could tell us how are CFOs building a faster and seamless supply chain for the future, and also if you could add to it in terms of what are the major obstacles do you face there?
I'm not a CFO, but okay. So let me put it. FMCG supply chain is much different, and it is a less of we were just talking. We talk about top line, bottom line, and what we always speak about the growth part of it, which is more for CFO. But the major important part of it is how low can you keep your working capital. And it can be as low so that your net working capital goes negative, which means you run the business on the vendor's money largely, which also means that you have so many times the rotation of the same money. And if you add to it that you are, let's say our business, 90% of our business runs on advance money. Now, if all these parameters are in place, it means your supply chain needs to be much agile, much because we look our inventory holding days is just 4 days, not more than that.
Wow.
So and we need to be on. We close our sales every Friday, and it's not monthly sale; it's a weekly sale.
That's very
Both
nice.
sales and collection. So we need to. We are so much on toes that Friday is a very unrest day for in our company. Whether it is IT, whether it is CFO to ensure the collection happens, or for supply chain to ensure the next Monday ka plan should be ready, because they only have 5 days in hand. So it's like it's an hexagon kind of work where none of the side can be relaxed to make it, and this can only happen if you are your processes orchestrate well, and they can be now they are getting augmented with using a technology platform. We are not fully there, but now when we are seeing is can our plan and execution, can they come closer? For example, we speak about monthly plan. We bring down the slot to 15 days. Now we are a weekly. Now plan and execution, the more they closer, you will see the result in the market. And to do this even from 5 days to 1 day, so planner and execution, they seamlessly talk to each other. That's the ultimate position you can be, and which is very important for FMCG. May not be that relevant to the other industry, but for FMCG, and that's where we're aiming at. And this cannot happen just because of with Excel or slightly better system. No, it needs to be much superior SNOP system to be there. So, and that's our target to be there, because that's we have reached now a weekly closing. We see where we do head it, but yes, we are on the roadmap where we want to be.
Oh, I think meaningful thoughts. So good to see that even we have a company. TGIF is not only for you, thank God it's Friday. Even we also don't say thank God it's Friday, because you have to plan for the next week of stories. So, Alpesh, do you want to add to it on the supply chain?
So, sure. In fact, I came from pharma industry where that Friday was never like that. So, and then today you see that you cannot afford to have a slightest slowdown of the system, kind of thing. And then we have a target, let's say on a Friday, all that 4 days, whatever truck I didn't dispatches, and that last day Friday we'll see per plant till maybe 80 or 90 trucks get dispatched on that last day, and multiplied by the many plants, and so much load comes out on whole transaction systems and the whole. So that's a different world altogether.
I have a liking to go down on Friday. 6:37. It will make up the whole of your weekend.
Sure, I will come to that. But Alpesh, do you want to
Sure. So, I mean, from pharma perspective, I would just like to add there. So, we have different verticals there. So, like one is generics, one is CDMO there, and then there also we have API formulation. So, broadly, we don't have such a exciting journey where we are always on toes. But there the challenges which would call for the innovation is that you need to plan ahead of market. So, say for example, today, if I'll be thinking only for next 1 or 2 or 3 months, that would not help me to plan in advance for the kind of business opportunities or challenges which we face.
Correct.
So we work on MTS, MTO, and also on the make to stock, make to order, and also on the sport business basis. So there, wherever it is, MTS part, your SNOP process, your forecast, the planning accuracy, everything falls in place. Whenever it's more of MTO part, then your asset allocation, the planning, the scheduling piece, and then the execution part, that plays a pivotal role there. And to make sure that all of them talk to each other, you have to have the digital piece involved, and where even the next requirement is like the resources involved, which are more of cross-functional in nature. They should be talking to each other not only through the physical mode but also through the digital mode. So,
okay.
Thank you.
Noted your point, Alpesh. So Dhaval, I will come to you, and if you could tell us on a CIO and CTO's perspective, because everybody's, ultimately, CFOs are sanctioning the budget, but CIOs and CTOs are the one who's actually looking at the digital transformation when we speak about the warehouse, logistics, supply chain. So what are the expectations from a CIO and CTOs when it comes to digital transformation journey of the whole organization?
So before I answer that, I have to share when the invite for this event came to me, that came driving business innovation in the digital world.
Great.
What didn't come, or maybe I missed, was that etcfo.com. Okay. So after I reached here, I spoke to my coordinator twice, came up to the desk twice and went back. And, I thought for sure I'm in the wrong place, and someone's made a mess. And then I was told, no, this is the event that you have to be. And then that entire horror of financial management from my MBA days, it flashed in front of my eyes. So while I was registering, I was trying to recollect, what are the financial ratios and what are the things we are going to discuss. And then from a corner of my eye, I saw Avdut there. I felt a little better. I said, at least I'm not getting beaten alone. So that's on the lighter side. But coming back to the question that you posed, I think the biggest problem today that at least I am seeing in my organization, and maybe some of the other companies that my counterparts work and they are sharing, is getting the business bandwidth is the biggest challenge for any digital transformation today. Because the problem is that everyone wants to embark and do the digital transformation, But when it actually comes to, say, the business handholding and doing it, there is always a challenge in terms of saying that we have a day job and we can only spare so much of time to be able to do it. And then what happens as a byproduct of it is that the initiative ends up being an IT initiative.
Correct.
And that's a failure recipe. So that's the biggest problem that we are seeing. And while everyone, attends forums and they hear from the board of directors, some jazz word comes somewhere, and then all of a sudden everybody wants to do that without fully understanding the applicability. So those are some of the behavioral and the cultural aspects of it. And the second biggest problem when it comes to actually executing the digital transformation today is the mindset in terms of adoption of the technology. So the first part is because, and it is somewhere also a factor of the first part where they are not fully participating into it, because then that ownership is never there, or it is not fully there. It's always a thought of as somebody is doing something and it is being handed over to us, and then we need to run with it. So as a course correction, what we have done in Piramal is that we have tried very strongly to change this perception about IT. And it's been a long and winding road to get where we are today, but I can proudly say that perception has definitely changed. So we strategically invested it from being seen as a commodity service provider or a support function to being a strategic partner.
Right.
And to do that, what we essentially did is that we started owning some of the business KPIs, and we had business own some of the digital and IT KPIs.
Okay.
So I think that has made that has shown the tendency to shrug aside things or to say that okay, this is not something that we see value in. It gets evaluated on merit.
Right.
So every initiative goes through a business case where business decides what the benefit is. It's not what ID would say. So for example, when we talk about the supply chain, and we would say that if you invest in a digital supply chain, it would lend to say somewhere like a 15% reduction in the inventory only. The business will come and say that it cannot be 15%. It will be 12%. We say okay, if it is 12%, are you ready to sign off to 12%? And they sign off to 12%.
Right.
And then we chase that number. So I think this part of where you stop looking at things in silos and try to look at digital as something that gets embedded into business rather than just being an enabler, I think it makes a lot of difference.
Noted your points, Dhaval, and apologies for that, the first part. But I mean, we believe that since we talk about the innovation along with the CFOs, we should also have the CIOs. But I think meaningful thoughts there, Dhaval. Let me bring you here, Nidhi, and you heard the CIO talking. So as a CFO, what are the expectations that you have from the CIOs and the CTOs, if I could tweak the same question?
Yeah, so predominantly the textile industry has not seen as much digitization as would have FMCG or even an aggregator like Amazon would have seen. So I agree to some extent with him. What tends to happen is IT is always looked as a cost center. Whereas if you see the role of CIO and CTO has evolved drastically in the digital world. Here, as a CFO, when I'm looking at my counterpart CTO, my expectation definitely is that I look him at as a business strategist who joins hands with me to grow the organization digitally, as well as provide the basis where as a CFO I can make key decisions. Those decisions could be for capex, for investments. At the same time, when my expectation is set out for a CTO, it is that they need to streamline the communication between the teams. They need to closely integrate the teams. While automation, digitization is always key, but at the same time, they need to be cost effective. I mean, because I'm sanctioning the budget, I don't expect that a big cost comes on the head, right? So, primarily, while digitization, automation, at the same time, I want them to think out of the box. Because this level of automation has never happened in the textile industry and it's now happening. We've also at Sanathan made certain changes and made certain changes in the logistic and warehousing area. But at the same time, some back-to-back integration of all the processes with out-of-box thinking and a cost-effective model is something which I would look at.
Okay, valuable thoughts, Nidhi there. So, Vipin, you have been looking at industry innovation very significantly. So my question is about the financial process automation. So if you could phrase it like this, how digital technologies are critical for financial process automation?
So technology has touched almost every aspect of life's business or whatever you are all about, right? You are holding a phone 24/7, literally 24/7. Everything that you do is touching some or the other technology. So finance could not have been a silo in itself. Now I'll give you some of my experiences of how these technologies are changing the way finance is being handled or finance is being looked at. I am the erstwhile CIO for Wellspun, and there one of the challenges, they are largely into exports, right? One of the challenge was that when I ship my material from here today, it will take me 45 days to get my papers so that I can get my money back. Now this is a huge cost that nobody is looking at, because everybody thinks that this is the regular process, there is nothing you can do about it. But when you start looking at it from the technology angle, we designed a process in 2015, 2016, where we were able to cut down those 45 days into 5, maybe 7 days. Now that 40 days of interest is a pretty big number when you look at the top line, right? And that is how finance got changed, because there is a digital piece happening. Another example that I'm going to talk about is how do I recover my money, my dues from people who I have sold. There will be disputes, right? There will be differences to say, I sold you this much quantity and for this value, but no, there were some returns, so on and so forth. How do I create a technological backbone to say that instantly I will tell you what was sold, what was reconciled, what was returned, and this is the money that you owe me. Please pay me as per the terms and conditions without any delay on that. Again, some amount of that negative cash flow that Abdul was talking about coming into play. The most common example today, and I'll stop here after this, is the payments that we are making from a force. Right? I believe that we are probably the only nation, or at least the biggest nation or the biggest economy, where we are doing all of this. You go to US, my sister stays there, and when she compares these two systems, she says, I still have to sign a check, go to a bank, and get that payment, either withdraw or whatever you want to do, you do. Here I'm doing it, with my half of my eyes closed, just pushing some buttons and making payments no matter what that size is. It could be 50 rupees, it could be 50 lakh rupees, but I'm doing it from the phone. Right? Those are the technological changes that have changed how finance is being looked at and finance has been thought of as.
Yeah, noted your points. I think all the time we keep talking about the benchmark or the Victoria stories of the developed countries, but that is not true anymore, specifically in the digital innovation as such, right? So, Saurav, let me bring you here and take your thoughts also specifically on the digital innovation. So, what are the areas that need digital innovation, and how do you see it in your business or your company?
So, my company is not into consumer per se.
Right.
We are a B2B company, majorly into agrochemicals. But so I can bring some new perspective. So the China Plus One is playing out beautifully well for us, and this is the first time when we are saying we are not able to supply whatever demand is coming on. So that is throwing up very different kind of challenges in terms of the capex planning which we need to do, and capex has to be very intensive. So how do you upgrade your capabilities so fast so meet those demands? Number one. Number two, in chemical sector specifically, Industry 4.0 is the thing now going on. Because safety, automation and productivity all go hand in hand, and safety is the most important part of this along with ESG. So all the companies, including my company, is investing a lot in Industry 4.0 in improving the process safety and the expansion. Without digitization, automation, hardly possible to do all that. Latest addition in the current setup, the supply chain disruptions. So even if you can project everything, and if you don't project your supply chain properly, you are stuck.
Right.
So supply chain, to my mind, is one of the new normal disruption for some time. We are still figuring out how to make that more efficient and maybe use technology to be enabler there as well.
True. We also have Rajgopal Nayak, the CTO from Metro Bands Limited. So Rajgopal, how do you like to talk about, if I ask you how are CIOs or the CTOs or the digital officers ensuring the ensuring that evolving technologies are aligned with the strategies or business strategies specifically in the organization is keeping up with innovation. Because the world is so competitive, and ultimately, like Niti said some time back, that there has to be a cost, effective proposal. So how do you actually look at that innovation along with the business strategies?
So today, if you look at it, it's a no-brainer, right?
Yeah.
That whatever you do in technology has to have a business intent, right? Otherwise, why are we doing it? It's not that the organization has excess funds, right? So anything that you do, one will be to drive efficiencies, right? Which is actually a constant endeavor that happens. Second is to drive innovation stroke change, right? Now your change and the innovation piece, right, are always something that have to be tied into business strategy, and from the business strategy is what you're attempting to do, and the execution of that becomes technology, right? I don't think today we live in a world where any change that you're doing within your processes, have a technology impact. Any new line of business you're opening has a technology impact. The way in which you want to aspire to serve your customers, or even, for argument's sake, improve the life of your employees, right, has a technology impact over there. And even something as training today, there are systems available, SCORM compliant systems, wherein you can drive training, you can get certification in place. So it's a complete technology play. So it's never the case that, very rarely will I ever see that there is a system or an implementation that doesn't have, a boardroom kind of approval. Historically, for example, cybersecurity was something that nobody spoke about in the board, right? It was something that we felt it's for IT and done by IT, and whatever you do, nobody is really bothered about. Today is not the case. Today, one of the first things that, if there are two topics that discussed in the board as far as IT is concerned, one is in the whole area of analytics/AI ML, if I may use that word, and second is in the area of cybersecurity. So, thank you.
Sure, noted your points. In fact, not only just security officer, but now the banks have started hiring hackers themselves, so that they can
Is there
protect
systems?
So I would just add here in Crompton
Sure.
also what we do is we have hired a CISO. So that person's assignment is after every 3 months or 6 months, he tries to hack into our accounts.
Right.
So he does that. So it's not only banks, those who are doing, but even companies are doing. And as Rajgopal mentioned, boards of companies are these days very particular about having proper measures for cyber security. And during pandemic, it became very important because the scare or the threat was more during those days.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. So, Madhav, let me bring you back here and refer to what Rajgopal said about the transformation and automation. Could you give us some examples, like how are things happening globally in terms of if there are any examples related to customers operating in this space, or how is technology playing a critical role in creating some successful business transformations? Because there are so many worries. At one side, they have to create a business value. Second, they have to make a seamless innovation so that things will be really seamless. And third, everything should be agile and transformative. So, any examples you want to share?
Yeah, so one of the things that is different or we see now is we always did alleviation of pain. So we said, what is your pain point, and this is my solution. What tech is now driving is a benefit or a value. It sounds very cliched, but think of it. Most brands today, their brand promises are on delivery or on efficiency, which essentially means the brand promise works on a tech-driven intervention. Whether somebody is giving you something in 30 minutes, somebody is delivering in 5 minutes, you're getting this experience, all of it, the brand promises are now tech-led, which means that tech has moved from the back room. It has now moved to being the differentiator in the marketplace, and that's the big change that we see in transformation. And most of it comes from, like Rajgopal said, AI/ML is abused, but the fact is that most solutions now demand that inbuilt. So we don't do, whether it be an ERP or a CRM, all of them have the technologies now built in, which look at process efficiency, but most of them also look at how models will change. If we have customers who moved away from selling products to selling services.
Yes.
So you can buy air conditioning. Don't buy air conditioners, but buy cooling.
Yes.
That is a reality today. I will service you with air conditioning for this room at this cost. That's coffee is a very common example. All of that is tech driven, and what we are now doing that's the big change that has happened. When I'm talking very grassroots examples, but this is how at a fundamental level the businesses are changing, and all of that is driven by tech. Larger innovations you can talk about, but there are these small innovations which are actually driving lots of transformations in today.
Okay, very valid points, Madhav. Let me come back to you again, and take more perspective specifically from the SRL logistics perspective, Mangesh, because you spoke about the sample collections online, virtual, and the delivery and everything. So how should, according to you as a CFO, how should CFO and CIO work in tandem in the current dynamic world where, the innovation evolving so significantly? At one side, you adopt some technology, and by the time you integrate and it starts performing, there is another technology.
Absolutely.
So how the CFOs and CIO, work together according to you?
Okay. So what Lily had said earlier. So one, CIO is a cost center, and I am a cost controller. And we need to work together. And of course, we do have to collaborate. We do have to think out of the box how we can think about new solutions. So I'll give some examples. Okay, so there's a logistic piece which involves bringing the samples to the lab. Okay, so we have different models. One model is where we built in Kerala, for example, we have 200 labs where we built a lab near to customer so that they can come to the lab and give the samples. But that's not a scalable model because there's a lot of capex, lot of manpower. So instead of that, why not concentrate on something like we can have faster delivery. So in between we had done some drone delivery test as well, so which we are working on right now. So now the question is, should we really invest into something like drone, or which is a very capex heavy, or should we really go to a rider service, something like there are a lot of Dunzo and all those guys who can give us rider service per pickup and delivery. Now this is OPEX versus CAPEX discussion, okay, and that's where we come together, and with a horizon of 1 year versus 3 years and 5 years, how will the industry move, what will exactly happen after a few years, and accordingly we have to take decisions. So this is, you can't be working in silos. So definitely CTO and CFO, CIO have to come together and have a combined discussion, collaborative discussion on what exactly will be the future of the business, what are the new trends in the business, how is the who are the new like if there are suppose a new service provider who can take some part of our capex or opex, we can outsource the non-core services and concentrate on the core service of diagnostic. So how we can do all this? So lots and lots of discussion we keep on doing. Okay, almost every day we keep on talking to each other on how better we can do, how better can be the logistics delivery and service. So and we come at a solution that yes, this is the best thing to do, and then implement. So it's yeah.
Sure. Ashish, you want to add something to it?
No, I think what we started with is in terms of how the technology is moving, and I think of course there is always a constant view in terms of, are we investing in the right technology? Is it going to get obsolete? Are we getting into a space which is there? I guess there are two pieces, and I believe Dhaval mentioned also on the point on mindset. I think the only add I would have in this, while there would be multitude of technologies that will come in, the question that we will need to have it on the table is how are we transforming the mindset for our teams? And I think the bigger question which sometimes happens to not just, I'm sure, for CFOs, but even for across any operating person would be, is the technology really getting used? Because I think that's where the bigger question, it's never a question about when you sell the technology or when you are implementing it. I think everyone has the right intent. The challenge starts coming in once you've done the technology, but you still see the way the working are not changing the way you had envisaged to it. And I think that starts putting it further questions on the next technology wave that you want to ride it. That is it going to go through the same path on having a state-of-the-art technology, but your way of working continues to be that manual ways. And that's where I think the discussion starts going into things. And I guess that's the job for all of us, especially the ones who are like, say, from the supply chain side or customer service. I think that's where our job is, to make sure that whatever technology that we are embracing is, we are equally bringing in the mindset change, and we are also ensuring that our ways of working are changing. I mean, I think Pragya talked about the digital document signage. I think that's just one of the examples. But the question is this, that as the pandemic eases out and people start coming back to office, are we still getting back to our old habits of people walking into the office and seeking that approvals in hand, versus some of the good things that we learned with the speed and agility which the technology can bring in? And I think the moment as an organization we are able to display those characteristics, it will build that confidence across the levels. It will bring that confidence to the supply chains, to the CIOs, that okay, the next technology would be as effective as I'm seeing it, because I can take my organization along, and I'm sure the CFOs would have the right vision that okay, whatever gets envisaged gets executed and delivered to it the way we want to do it. And so for me, that change is equally critical as we bring in the new technology into foray.
Noted your points. Ashish, let me ask one important question, and I will start with Avadhut. Maybe I will take this with a couple of people here. So since you mentioned some time back the supply chain or the warehouse, the possibility of only 4 days and the Friday. Considering all these challenges, what kind of supply chain do you envisage in the future? What kind of warehouse do you want to build? What kind of technology do you want to use? How do you see the future warehouse or the logistic structure?
More than a warehouse, I would say, if everybody sees one integrated plan, then I think the game will be much easier. If you look at supply chain, you have somebody has a dispatch plan, somebody has a production plan, somebody has a demand plan, and as many plan as much as the groups are there. Okay, so that is where if you can bring the plan on a one kind of canvas, it will be good. We have seen, and that's where our thought is, we are also contemplating, we are looking in the direction of SNOP is today, if I have one integrated planner, and I'll come back to why we are thinking in the direction is, even when we are having a collaborative meeting across, let's say we have people sitting across pan India, different locations, maybe sales, maybe manufacturing, maybe warehouses, wherever you say. Yeah, when they start simulating what if analysis, and you have one integrated plan in place, you will see the impact of that plan on a different dimension. If the CFO is sitting, he will see his numbers. If demand planner will say his number, manufacturing will see what constraints load on me. And this is something which is today possible, and we are not there, but we have seen the companies who have reached there, to be honest. So that's one part which is where we are hoping we will be in maybe a year or a half kind of thing. That's a plan. And why year and a half? Because of what Dhaval has said. Because it's a big mindset change, and mindset change is a more than getting aligned to it, but owning it. That's a difference.
Right.
Because today you said if problem comes, it is IT problem. If it is let's say why I'm saying that, because of the better planning, because of much better planning, if the sales goes up, the salesperson will never give a credit to a planner. So you will never be able to really see the positive impact of this on the outcome. That's one. Second, what happens is, why this is very important, and I'm sure everyone has experienced this, is the KPIs are individually driven today by different functions and not in an integrated manner. So let's say OTIF, she spoke about OTIF. Okay. My OTIF is at 90%. Manufacturing guy also says that my OTIF is 90%. My quality says that I meet my OTIF. Whatever inspection comes to me, I meet my 90. Now, if everybody says 90, but the resultant is less than 90, right? If I say product 90 into 0.9, 0.9, 0.9, it won't be 90. And that's the reality. When the customer who gets it, he complains that your OTIF is not even 90. But everyone presents in a very silos mode says that this is 90%. And somebody may also say 99, even say 99%, you are not at 90. So I think these are some of the real life problems. If organization gets aligned to at some point of time, we will reach there when it comes to availability to promise incomes, and the experience is, many a time when you think you get it, is an experience. Sometimes you might not get to the level but you think you get it. So in short, if this kind of system we reach, we will start speaking heart and mind of the people, and that's going to be a differentiator. We are aiming that. We'll see where we end up. It should not the disruption should not be disturbance, but it will. But that's where we look at it now. And then if this particular bus is very strong, then you start moving on the strategic side much faster, much better, much more acceptable way, where you will see, where if I change one component, we are working with, of course, with SAP in this line, and saying if I change in even a small paisa of one component of my RM or PM or any of this, what will be my impact on my product costing? What will be impact on my volume? If I increase the MRP, and then in FMCG, this is beautiful things which happen. If all my product, and USP of Parle is price. If you see, all our products are 10 rupee. So what happens is, if I increase, and this we have experienced also, if I increase a 10 rupee to one as 11 or 12 rupee, that product sales dips, but the other product increases in a manifold. So let's say Epi, if at some point we made an attempt to make it from 10 rupees to 11 rupees, the sale drop of Epi, but the sale of Fruity went up 3 times, and we were never ready for that kind of demand. So these kind of some predictive modeling or the external whispers you get it, whether without innovative way or the technology platform, I don't think we'll be able to do it. Today we are still judgmental thing, we take it, and it's a little bit of a long thinking model, but we have seen it's working in a very proof of value kind of thing, and minimum viable product. If you look at it, it is going to work. We'll see scalability whether it's going to work out.
Okay. Right, Avadut. Nidhi, I would also like you to add on the future of maybe warehouse or the logistics, if you don't mind.
Sure. So, as Saurav mentioned, even I belong to an industry which is a B2B. And as I mentioned, textile was always a neglected industry. It's now that the government is giving importance, through various schemes. At the same time, if you see, even today, textile functions more on a traditional setup wherein the sales is happening through a call and not an online, which typically happens in other industries. Now, as a result, and as it is, if you see in textiles, because of the number of colors, the different deniers, the inventory is the most important thing, and it's very difficult to handle because of the huge quantities. You will have tons of inventories and tons of dispatches on a daily basis, as well as tons of production coming out and sitting in your warehouse. So as a result, it's very important to automate the entire storage and retrieval method. While Sanathan was the first organization within the textile industry to automate this through an automated storage and retrieval system, which then was supplied by Wipro Pari. Today what is happening is that while we have automated that, but from a logistics and warehouse perspective, we are looking to automate more from, when the product is out, if it goes and sits in the conveyor belt, then there is a packing which happens through robotic technology, and then it goes and resides in the ASRS. After that, from ASRS to the vehicle. Now this automation is also very important, which we definitely would be looking at. At the same time, as Pradnya mentioned, we are also envisaging, taking all these documents through a digital signature platform. Because what happens is the number of customers, the number of agents are really high. And to manage the entire onboarding process, contracting, is not viable beyond a point of time, especially when your organization grows, your operation grows. It's not viable to manage it manually. So that's the step towards digitization which we are taking.
So basically, it's not only about the integrated planning within the organization. You just imagine a scenario where even today, we being the consumers of Amazon, Flipkart, once we place the order, we get the update every 2 hours, 3 hours, at times at least every day, and we know that where exactly our product is. Now, in the traditional business setup, we really don't have that visibility as of now. So say whether it is pharma, whether it is FMCG for that matter. Today, if I am sitting at my place and if I'll have to go to the nearest shop, I'll just pick the SKU which is available there. But you just imagine a scenario where doctor is writing a prescription, chemist is aware about that I am getting stock out, which also that visibility is with the stockist to CFA to the company's main warehouse, and then from there the angles from where the supplies are happening. So, and also imagine this situation which is even extended to the larger group there. So this was into the traditional medicine setup, but where for the innovation part, where the clinical trials are happening, somebody who is holding these clinical trials at one corner of say US, and the supplies are going to happen from India, and then for that Indian supplier, the raw material is going to come from China, and for this Chinese supplier, the raw material is going to come from the other continent. But you just imagine a end-to-end visibility with all the parties involved into that, and just see the kind of comfort, the live update available to each other, and each and everyone is quite involved and aware about that, which are all the disconnects, where are the delays happening, what I need to do as part of the next steps, plan B, the backups, and then even for that matter the internal communication, and also on the points on the CIO CFO part. So I think one is enabler, the other is approver, but there is also a role of a business where they'll have to show the differentiation which is coming out of whatever initiative is being taken. So even though the technology will become obsolete, but the difference it would create during that 3, 4, 5 years time span, and if you would be able to make them understand about the differentiation being created by whatever technology being adopted, I think that would be kind of a win-win situation even within the organization. So thank you.
I think meaningful thoughts there, Alpesh. Thanks for adding that. Saurav, let me come to you, and I think your point was really nice. Enabler and approval, CFO and CFO. Good point. So Saurav, my question to you is, when we look at the transformation, what kind of transformation will help companies to relevant in the near future in terms of your learning, in terms of your business?
That's a great question. In fact, I would like to add, because the ground has already been built,
Yeah.
so it's easier for me. I think the most important question, because we all have gone through multiple digitization, automation, some were very successful, some were not even picked up in spite of all the investments. So it's a time to pause and reflect before starting any new initiative. To me, the way we look at it is we start with why 5 times before initiating any big initiative now. Key, actually, what is the purpose why we want to do it? Irrespective, specifically it's a big ticket investment then for any automation or digitization project. Second thing is the business partnering concept plays the central theme, because ultimately we do everything all that's to drive the business, and if the business are not fully aligned to the purpose and the outcome, the initiative doesn't pick up beyond a point. So generally what my experience is, when we make a team which is a cross-functional team and the business takes the ownership and we are very clear about the why, that makes the winning mix. Third thing would be, for every automation there are various options, and some may be the best solution, but it may not be the best solution for your industry or your company. So rather than chasing for the latest one and the best one, we need to filter out which is the best one for me in my context, in my maturity curve, and then go for it. So those are the things which needs to be done very consciously, even if it takes some time, to ensure that digitization serves the purpose, or automation the purpose why we are doing all that. And there's a hell lot of effort put, apart from cost, the time involvement, the business risk which it entails are grave. So to my mind, all this has to be collaborated together for making any major changes.
If I can add on that, so what I have seen over the years, some technologies, there will be some failures. Definitely there will be some failures. So the key is that how soon we fail and how soon we learn from it and move on.
Right.
So that's one of the
Learning is very important, and why the failure happened. So that is why next time when you do that, why has to be very important.
Let me ask you, Pragya, about the compliance specifically. You answered it in the first part, but if you could be specific, because you spoke about digital innovation a lot, right? So from a CFO's perspective or as a compliance officer's perspective, what trait should a compliance officer of today have when you speak about all this digital transformation?
Correct. So, when you talk about digital transformation, first thing is I should know what is happening in the industry. I should have good knowledge of my industry as well as what is the digital innovation other companies are doing. Apart from that, the person who works as compliance officer should also have a keen eye to actually assess what worked for a certain industry may not actually work for me, as I think Saurabh you also pointed out. And the person should also be nimble on the feet and agile. Suppose something doesn't work out. Right. So the company and the person should be agile to pick up, bounce back. So I think that is also very important. And being the compliance officer, I have also realized that on a daily basis, I would say, SEBI is coming out with changes. So it becomes very important for us, and we company secretaries are on our toes these days. And digitalization has helped. But until and unless I know what are the changes, how to implement, because the platform that I took, we have a platform for companies at compliances. It has LODR compliances also. But my company 2 years back decided to issue NCDs also. So the compliance requirement after you issue NCDs, there are certain reporting requirements. They are different. So they were not built in that platform. And then there were changes. So I have to tell the service provider, look at it, this amendment has come in, kindly update it. So the compliance officer has to be very, always aware and keep himself or herself updated. And of course, if something fails, bounce back quickly.
Before I wrap, maybe I will just ask all of you, to share your thoughts or concluding remarks, maybe in 20-30 seconds, so that we can wrap in, 20, maybe 4-5 minutes or so, and join us for a dinner. So, where should I start from? Should I start from you, Saurabh?
Sure. So, very insightful evening. I think we all learned from each other. And one thing we clearly coming out is there is no option not to digitize or automate. But the real thing is getting that right clear and then filtering based on each company's need and requirement. then business partnering, and then taking it forward. So make it a successful project.
Sure.
I think probably what to do, when to do, why to do, and then with whom to do. So probably I think thank you to everyone for this meaningful evening.
Sure. Ashish?
And I think all of us just talked about change, and I think the presentation also talked about change management. So just for me, the key takeaway would be that change is going to come, whether COVID forces us or accelerates the change, or the industry forces us. I think that all that is going to come in. The question that we need to be just mindful of that, how do we ensure that we live that change in the rightful sense, and then we also take our people and processes along to make that as a meaningful difference to our organizations.
Madhav, any points?
Well, in conclusion, all I can say is technology helps businesses run better. That's our tagline, but it's a line we believe in.
Okay. Mangesh?
So one thing which I feel is transparency with digitization. So what happens is once we are in the digital world, we get digital. The customers, the employees, everyone has transparency on what's exactly happening at what stage, and with that, with the change that we are bringing because of digital, we bring in more transparency, and that helps the entire business.
Okay.
Correct. So, as was rightly pointed out by the speakers before me, digitalization is a must. We cannot run away from it. And while we do that, we should also be mindful of this is going to be a part of change management. So, it has to be patiently and beautifully handled. That I would say, and I would also want to add here that when you do anything of that sort, everyone, the entire team or the entire organization should be aligned to it, and there should be a proper collaboration amongst everyone.
Sure.
So with the teamwork, collaboration, change management, changing the mindset, managing the budget, I think we all need to look at various aspects of compliance, motivating the team. Obviously, adding at a later stage, we would all be tracking ESG, sustainable development goals, and we should take it forward accordingly.
Sure. Dhawan?
So I would say don't invest in technology because you have to. Invest in it only if you believe in it. Stick with it for the visible time frame, and always remember, and I firmly myself believe in it, is that technology alone will not do the transformation. It will not take you ahead. You have to look at the people and process part also. So it has to be lean processes with future ready workforce on digital technologies. That makes it happen.
Noted. Avadut?
For innovation and transformation, triangulate mindset, skill set, and people set.
Okay. Noted your points. I think a lot of learning for all of us, for sure. And thank you so much for being part of this conversation. And please stay connected to tcfo.com. We'll keep on reaching to you, and we'll try to take your perspective, your side of the story on our portal. So please feel free to add your thoughts there. Thank you so much for being part of this conversation.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.